Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to take a seat. Let's start. It's already 10 minutes over. Thank you. Excellencies, the Assistant Secretary General Thomas Gass, and it's about the strengthening of thematic reviews at the HLPF, and we will discuss the question how preparatory events like the Global Soil Week, which took place in May in Berlin, can contribute to an integrated and coherent approach to SDG implementation. This is not a trivial question. It's about the functioning of the HLPF as such. Let's be realistic. The HLPF is not a success just because it takes place annually. We all have to work together that it keeps its political momentum. And it should not become a routine meeting where the SDG professionals meet annually and assure once again each other that the SDGs are important and that the implementation is important and that we all have to strengthen our commitment. Now, I just discussed with Marianne Beisan. We will have to discuss it in the coming years until 2019. What is the HLPF all about? It's not only the HLPF as such, this is the culmination. What is coming around it, what is done as preparatory work, what is done afterwards. This is much more important when it comes to implementation of SDGs. And I think therefore we have today an interesting opportunity to discuss. It's not only the official review and checking of implementation, it's about the whole process and what can a thematic review, particularly now in the field of nutrition and soil, do. I looked also into the G20 declaration, which was adopted unanimously, as you know, last Friday in Hamburg by 20 world leaders, not 19 plus 1, but 20. And it contains the following sentence. We support the central role of the the high-level political forum on sustainable development and other key UN processes towards achieving the sustainable development goals. I think this is an important conclusion of the G20 and proves the close relationship between G20 and the UN. Just by chance, on Friday night, I saw an interview with Secretary General Guterres. He gave it to our German TV channel, Erstes Programm, the Tagesthemen, and he was asked whether or not the UN might be sidelined when G20 leaders meet regularly and adopt important conclusions and influence significantly the current world agenda. And what was his answer? He said, the G20 and the UN are both necessary because the challenges of today's world are so vast that we need different formats to tackle these problems. He said that he appreciates very much that the 2030 agenda is part of the G20's Leaders' Declaration, and it acknowledges its role, the key guideline for sustainable development. The German government, as you know, strongly supports the 2030 agenda. We presented last year our national voluntary review and updated our German national sustainability strategy in January 2017. And furthermore, we initiated concrete measures to implement all 17 SDGs. And Germany is also supporting the development strategies and approaches to address cross-cutting issues within the SDGs that allow for more collaboration with partners. And one of these initiatives you will hear about today is the Global Soil Week. You'll find information about it on the table. The Global Soil Week is an initiative for the sustainable management and governance of soils. And you will hear how our Ministry of Food, Agriculture and Consumer Protection intends, I see the House representing the Ministry, intends to support discussions about nutrition at future meetings of the HLPF. Let me just at the end make another more general remark. Our goal today is to continue the discussion about ways to strengthen the thematic reviews at the HLPF. We are particularly interested in learning more about the interlinkages between goals and targets. And therefore I encourage everyone in the room to provide his insights on how to support thematic reviews and how to better engage private citizens in their efforts. So with these words of welcome, I wish us all a productive event. And now I would like to give the floor to former State Secretary and later FAO Assistant Secretary General Alexander Müller from the think tank TMG, Think Tank for Sustainability. And who knows somebody what TMG means? I Googled it before. It means Think Tank for Sustainability, Töpfer, Müller, Gassner, GmbH. Alexander, you have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, dear friends, it's now my pleasure to also warmly welcome you here to our event with quite a complex title, Nutrition and Soils in the 2030 Agenda, Contribution to the High-Level Political Forum Thematic Reviews. Before I'm going to walk you through the agenda and try to provide some introductory remarks, I would like to thank Reinhard Grapp, Minister and Head of Economics Department here from the Permanent Mission of Germany to the United Nations for hosting this event and for all the excellent support you people have provided in setting everything up. Thanks a lot. This was really a very, very good service. Why are we inviting you at the High-Level Political Forum 2017, where many countries present their plans and ideas on the implementation of the SDGs, and where an overarching theme on poverty and human well-being is a cross-cutting issue to be discussed at the High-Level Political Forum to take a specific look at the SDGs from a soils and land perspective, and why additionally are we adding nutrition to it? We are doing it because over the last 4 years, we have set up something called the Global Soil Week, where we have brought together hundreds of experts from governments, civil society, private sector, NGOs, to work on the question, how can we address complex issues embedded in the ambitious SDGs? The SDGs are really ambitious. They want to transform the way we are consuming, the way we are producing. They have, you all know it, 17 SDGs, many, many indicators. How can we manage the complexity and the trade-offs of the implementation of the SDGs? And we would like to do it from a very specific perspective. The International Resource Panel of the United Nations Environment Programme was doing an analysis of the land needs of the SDGs, and they came up with a very simple result. If we want to implement the SDGs in a business as usual way, we would need a second planet. There's a huge demand on land and soils. We want to sequester carbon, we want to produce more food. Urbanization is rapidly growing, we need infrastructure, we want to protect soil biodiversity, we need more forests, and the space is limited. And therefore we started a discussion on looking how do we have to address specific issues with high importance for the SDGs from a perspective of land and soils and later on nutrition. What we want to do is we want to support the High-Level Political Forum in its negotiations, maybe also in the reform of the High-Level Political Forum after 2020. And we are convinced, and Reinhard Grapp already mentioned it, that it needs sound and solid preparation for the High-Level Political Forum. You cannot solve the problems of the world within 2 weeks, even if all ministers and heads of state show up. We have to organize a preparatory meeting. And we did it. We were looking at land and soils, inviting all stakeholders, and we have developed a methodology on land and soils in order to deal with the trade-offs, with the possible synergies between the different SDGs. And if you look at the SDGs, being reviewed this year here in New York. It's 1, 2, 3, 5, and others I have noted it somewhere, 9, 14, and 17. And if you only look at these SDGs, you will see important linkages where soil plays a role. And let's be honest, soil is not the only issue playing an important role in this complexity. And therefore, we have set up this process together with, and we are really happy, countries and a lot of organizations to build up an inclusive process to develop a methodology on how to do thematic reviews. We have done it with land and soils, and now with the support of the German Ministry for Agriculture, we are doing a scoping study on how to deal with nutrition. From my very personal perspective, nutrition is an excellent indicator of the implementation of the SDGs goes in the right direction. In the end, healthy nutrition and healthy people should be the overarching aim of the implementation of the SDGs without destroying the natural resource base also for future generations. And therefore we have invited you, and we have invited important and interesting speakers to present the results of what we have discussed so far in Berlin. We were also thinking about, is there a way to express in a very brief sentence what we have done, because the thematic review on lands and soils with regard to different SDGs means something for experts. But if you want to explain to people on the street why are we dealing with these complex issues, we have to explain it in a very, very different way. And we really hope that one of the outcomes of this meeting here will be a better understanding in finding a language to explain what we are doing and what does it mean implementation of SDGs. We know that in the end, SDGs will work for people, for all people. And therefore it's important to always have in mind to leave no one behind. That's the ultimate goal. But how can we do it? How can we and how do we in the developed world, you might hear it, I'm coming from Germany from my accent, how do we have to transform our consumption patterns and our production patterns in order to enable poor people in developing countries to go out of poverty and to live a life in dignity? We are living in one world, and the patterns of our consumption are intrinsically linked to economic development or to land degradation in this country. It depends on how we are doing it. And that's the ultimate goal of our work stream here, to link important issues with relevance to all SDGs in a way together that we avoid negative trade-offs and we can work on synergies and we can really deal with the implementation of the SDGs in a way that we are leaving no one behind. I'm happy to see many familiar faces, people who have participated last year or 2 years ago in side events we had organized, because what we are doing is not a one-time event. We want to develop a work stream where we are working together across the globe on important issues with relevance to the SDGs. We have done this work on soil together with important partners, and I would like to briefly introduce them, in countries such as India, Kenya, Ethiopia, Burkina Faso, and Benin. We are doing work on soil rehabilitation, but we want to bring the lessons from the countries up to the high-level political forum, and we would like to inform the countries on the negotiations here in the high-level political forum. Very often there's a big gap, there's a not understanding between the global processes and the work at the local level. And our aim is to link it together and to learn the lessons and to provide input for the negotiations here in the high-level political forum. And therefore, what we are doing is kind of a cross-cutting review of interlinkages we have to consider in order to achieve the SDGs as a package. The value of SDGs lies in the integration. If we only look at one SDG or the other, and we don't look at the integration, it might have negative effects. How can we achieve eradication of poverty without undermining the ability of future generations to produce enough food? How do we have to deal with natural resources with regard to development, to sustainable development? These complex questions have to be put together in thematic reviews, and I'm really happy that over the last years we have developed a work stream in Berlin in the member countries and also here in New York, working together and identifying the best way forward. If I'm trying to walk you through the agenda, and I hope you have new glasses so that you can really read what we are doing. After the introduction, my brief introduction, we will have a welcome by co-host member countries. And here you see that our colleague and friend from Benin is still on the agenda. Unfortunately, she had problems with visas. Not related to the new regulation here in this country, but related to problems in her home country. And therefore I'm happy that our friend from Burkina Faso, Dauda Maiga, is going to represent both countries. And he has also the pleasure to speak on behalf of the other countries. We are working together because the interlinkage between our work streams and the country work is so important. And then we will receive an input from civil society, and I'm especially happy that a representative of indigenous people is going to speak here. Very often we think if we discuss these issues in the developed world, we'll find a solution. No way. We have to be inclusive everywhere, and we have to especially look at vulnerable groups, and we have to look at indigenous people, and therefore this is a clear reference that we have to be inclusive, and John Carling is going to present it. Afterwards, Thomas, thanks for coming. You have accompanied our processes over a long time, and we really appreciate that you take the time to present here, and I think no one is better placed to provide an overview of the ongoing SDG process, how to link it with reviews and thematic reviews, and we are really looking forward to hear from you. And then we are opening the floor for a first round of comments, brief questions. No additional 5-minute speeches, but really brief and crispy, so that we have the opportunity to also provide answers. And then we are doing something which is very important for our work. We try to apply our ideas on thematic reviews from a land and soils perspective, also on the important field of nutrition. And if you analyze what the SDGs are telling us about nutrition, you will immediately see that nutrition is a very cross-cutting issue. It's in the center of education, of food production, of sanitation, of hygiene, of governance, and therefore further developing our methodology for nutrition, I think, is worthwhile. And we would like to come back at the next high-level political forum when SDG 15 will be reviewed, so that we can present the importance of good nutrition for management of natural resources. It's very closely interlinked, and we will not talk about kilocalories and tons per hectare only. We will talk about health diets, and that's something very, very different. And then I'm happy to have our friend and colleague Ruth Richardson, the Executive Director of the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, here with us. It's an alliance, 23 private foundations, mainly in Northern America, but also foundations from Europe. She's supporting work on what is called Keep Agri-Food, the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity for food and agriculture, trying to analyze the positive and negative externalities of our food system. Producing food is much more than producing kilocalories. To give you one example I always use, agriculture employs 1.3 billion people. The biggest labor force in the world, the biggest employer. The automobile industry in the world employs 25 million people. So if hundreds of millions of people should move out of agriculture, where should they go to? How many Ferrari factories do we have to build all over the world in order to provide employment? Or do we have to consider a way that small-scale farming is attractive, is profitable, and provides healthy livelihoods for people? This is one of the things we are working on in the team for food and agriculture. And then I have the pleasure to invite one of the sponsors of this event and someone with whom we are working very closely together, the German Ministry for Agriculture, Anke Niederhaus. She is the head of the unit for nutrition, to try to bridge the lessons we have learned from soils and land for thematic review to nutrition, because this will be our new focus. She has to replace Klaus Heider, the Director General for Food and Nutrition, because he had to stay in Germany for some cabinet decisions in the country, but she knows things even better than any Director General, and therefore we are happy with your idea. And then we are opening up for a second round of comments, and I'm going to try in the end to wrap everything up. Two important housekeeping information. First, our friend Dauda is speaking in French. So for those of you who want to improve your language skills, you don't need this little machine. Listen carefully, and then afterwards you know how good your French is or not. But those who need it, we have distributed on all chairs these little machines. Please, you have to push the button in the center for quite a long time to make it work. And don't forget, this is not a gift for you to take away. Please leave it here. The second issue is you might see a small smartphone attached to the loudspeaker here. You know what it means? There's a camera in it and a live stream. Whatever you are going to present here and the questions you're raising will be live streamed on Facebook. And maybe one or the other person is going to listen, and therefore please carefully consider your language. Don't insult anybody. Raise short questions in order to make a bella figura, a good figure, to try to have a good performance on Facebook. Thanks again for coming. It's a pleasure to have you all here, and I would now like to invite, as you see, our first speaker representing 5 countries, our friend, le conseiller technique du ministre de l'Agriculture et des Aménagements Hydrauliques Burkina Faso. Please take the floor. Happy you are here.
Merci Alexander. Mesdames et messieurs, Excellences, distingués invités, j'ai la chance et l'honneur donc de parler en premier et d'ouvrir le bal parmi les pays co-hôtes du présent événement. Comme l'a dit Alexander, notre ami, Madame Assowa du Bénin, n'ayant pas pu donc effectuer le déplacement. Je voudrais saluer très chaleureusement tous les pays co-hôtes, à savoir le Bénin, l'Éthiopie, le Kenya, l'Inde, le Guatemala à l'occasion de cet événement, et bien sûr, last but not the least, l'Allemagne. Et quand je parle de l'Allemagne, bien sûr que cela inclut BMZ, cela inclut la GIZ, et cela inclut également le think tank TMG de notre ami Alexander. Je salue également l'ensemble des autres parties prenantes à cet événement. Alexander, merci encore une fois pour avoir pu relever avec justesse la substance de nos 5 messages clés et de nous avoir servi un aperçu fidèle des discussions pertinentes et détaillées que nous avons eues à la Global Soil Week à Berlin en mai dernier. Mesdames et messieurs, vous me permettrez pendant ces quelques minutes qui me sont accordées de pouvoir peut-être partager très rapidement quelques impressions et des perspectives en lien avec donc la Global Soil Week et le sujet qui nous réunit cet après-midi. Alors, la première question qu'on est en droit de se poser, c'est donc pourquoi des sols et des terres en préparation au forum politique annuel de haut niveau des Nations Unies, alors que même cette année, 2017, l'ODD 15 ne fera même pas l'objet de revue. Alors, la réponse est bien simple car nous devons nous convaincre de l'importance et du caractère transversal de la question des sols. Des sols en bonne santé constituent la première base de prospérité et pour nourrir également sainement l'humanité entière. Autre question que je voulais partager avec vous, c'est que du point de vue de la méthodologie que nous avons utilisée pour travailler pendant les travaux de la Global Soil Week, nous avons choisi d'examiner de manière combinée plusieurs ODD. On pourrait également se poser la question de savoir pourquoi cette approche. Alors, je dirais que la pertinence de cette approche est certainement à rechercher dans le fait que plus que les objectifs du millénaire pour le développement, les ODD, quant à eux, parlent des hommes et parlent aux hommes. Il est question donc d'éradiquer la pauvreté et de promouvoir la prospérité dans un monde en perpétuelle mutation. La protection et la restauration des sols et de la terre concernent, sur les 17 ODD, et je ne vous apprends rien, concernent près de 11 des ODD sur les 17. C'est une raison de plus qui soutient ce que je viens de dire. Et nous devons donc mettre en parallèle les demandes croissantes de surface d'exploitation avec la nécessité de satisfaire tous les besoins croissants du monde, y compris en nourriture saine. Cela va donc de notre sécurité, à nous tous. Et au nom du continent africain, le Burkina Faso a abrité la cérémonie commémorative de la Journée mondiale de la lutte contre la désertification du 15 au 17 juin dernier à Ouagadougou, au Burkina Faso. Et à la faveur de cet événement, il s'est tenu le 15 juin un colloque de haut niveau sur le thème de la journée « Notre terre, notre maison, notre avenir ». Et en présence de ses homologues du Mali et du Niger, et également de Mme Monique Barbu, secrétaire exécutive de la Convention des Nations Unies sur la lutte contre la désertification, le président du FASO, M. Roch Marc-Christian Kaboré, a déclaré, et je le cite, « Sans terre, pas de vie, et sans vie, pas d'avenir. Le combat sur le triptyque soutenabilité, stabilité et sécurité nous interpelle tous, collectivement et individuellement. Lutter pour la gestion durable des terres, c'est assurer l'avenir de l'humanité tout entière. Ce combat nécessite donc une mobilisation de tous à tous les échelons et une solidarité internationale agissante. » Fin de citation. Cet appel démontre ici encore la volonté politique de passer des discours aux actes concrets. Et la secrétaire exécutive de la Convention, Mme Monique Barbu, et le représentant du Népal, M. Mamadou Diakité, qui avait participé activement au congrès sur les sols africains à Nairobi et dernièrement à la Global Soil Week à Berlin avec nous, ils se sont tous réjouis donc de cet engagement. Et ce passage ne pourra se faire, donc ce passage aux actes concrets ne pourra se faire que selon nécessairement une démarche multisectorielle et inclusive, ce qui confirme donc la pertinence de la méthodologie utilisée à la Global Soil Week pour un examen combiné donc des ODD. Le troisième aspect que je voulais aborder avec vous, c'est la question de l'évidence entre la qualité des sols et la santé humaine. Je crois que vous avez certainement déjà entendu l'affirmation selon laquelle l'agriculteur est le premier acteur de notre santé. Or, le premier facteur de production de l'agriculteur est la terre. Nous devons donc nous battre pour une écologie neutre, c'est-à-dire des modes de production qui croient en l'homme et qui militent pour son avenir. Dans cet ordre d'idée, en plus, dans mon pays, en plus de faire la promotion à l'échelle nationale de la fumure organique, les autorités de mon pays se sont engagées dans des pourparlers avec des partenaires pour nous appuyer à mettre en place une usine d'exploitation, de transformation de phosphate naturel dont regorge notre pays pour donc pouvoir faire l'amendement des sols cultivables de notre pays. Quatrième aspect que je voulais évoquer, partager rapidement avec vous, quel système de vulgarisation devons-nous développer pour promouvoir la gestion durable des terres suivant une approche holistique traitant de la chaîne des valeurs agricoles dans sa globalité, tout en rendant cette agriculture attrayante pour les jeunes. Personnellement, je crois fermement que, dans un premier temps, il faut une série de mesures à l'endroit des jeunes. Dans un premier temps, il nous faut ouvrir le dialogue avec ces jeunes et analyser leurs préoccupations. Ensuite, il nous faut, en fonction de cette analyse de leurs préoccupations, il nous faut donc renforcer leurs capacités en connaissance de cause de ces préoccupations. Il nous faut créer les conditions d'un accès sécurisé à la terre pour eux. Et il nous faut leur démontrer à eux, mais également pour nous, venant de pays en développement, nous pensons qu'il est nécessaire que nous puissions faire cette sensibilisation au-delà des jeunes, à l'endroit également de nos ministres des Finances, pour qu'ils comprennent que la terre, la gestion durable des terres, recèle un potentiel très fort qui peut être valorisé à travers une approche de développement holistique de la chaîne des valeurs. Et toutes ces mesures pourront, pour parler de la vulgarisation intelligente, toutes ces mesures pourront être renforcées par la mise en relation intelligente des connaissances, mais également des bonnes pratiques de la vulgarisation issue de la mise en œuvre des politiques, issues également des résultats de la recherche, mais également issues des pouvoirs et des savoirs locaux, des communautés à la base. Je voulais terminer mon propos en réaffirmant ici l'engagement politique renouvelé de l'ensemble des co-hôtes à soutenir la dynamique initiée par la Global Soil Week, notamment par la mise en place et l'animation d'une plateforme de débat fécond pour alimenter les perspectives en matière de partage et de vulgarisation intelligente des bonnes pratiques en la matière, et je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, especially for your commitment to continue the collaboration and to ensure that we will have sufficient linkages between global level and the work done at local level in the countries. It's now my pleasure to invite Joan Carling from the Indigenous People International Center for Policy Research and Education to address this. With people who are interested in a brief version of our policy messages, you can find this leaflet on the table. If you go out, there's also a bigger report, but here you find the 5 policy messages and some information on the way forward. Joan, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good afternoon. I was asked to present on the issue of land rights and effective land governance, particularly the reporting guidelines that were formulated in the Soil Week. There are 12 points in relation to right to land and strengthening accountability at the local level through thematic reviews. I will not go through the 12 points, but just emphasize on the policy and framework of these guidelines. First is we need to acknowledge that land rights and effective governance is imperative in achieving the SDGs, particularly in the pledge of leaving no one behind. In all the SDGs, land tenure is mentioned in Goals 1 on poverty reduction, Goal 2 on ending hunger, and Goal 5 on gender equality. And in moving forward with this, we need to have clear policy cohesion that is underpinned by human rights, recognition, protection, and realization, as well as a balanced implementation of the 3 dimensions of sustainable development, which are environment, economic, and social dimensions. Now, it's important to look at this, the human rights dimension and the balanced implementation of the 3 dimensions, because what's happening now, if we look at the VNR of countries, is that there's too much focus on economic growth and industrialization as a way to address poverty or ending hunger. But the multidimensional aspect of poverty, especially in relation to land tenure and land governance, is not at all being put forward as a means to ensure that those furthest behind, the poorest of the poor, are really going to benefit in so-called economic growth or industrialization. The second point is also it requires transparency and accountability, particularly of duty bearers and even investors, especially in relation to the use and management of land and resources. If I will go back again on the issue of the main focus now of economic growth, we know that a lot of investors are into this and they are not held accountable when they are violating the rights of indigenous peoples, fisher folks, small producers, and women. The third point is it requires inclusive and effective participation, particularly of the most marginalized and the rights holders. We cannot achieve the SDGs without the effective participation of those furthest left behind. And we cannot engage with them if their rights are not protected. If there is no enabling environment for these marginalized groups, including rights defenders, land rights defenders, they cannot even express themselves, or they are not even allowed to do legitimate actions to protect their lands and resources. In this way, we need to have a mechanism for the effective participation, not only in the name, because now it's becoming a lip service, the so-called multi-stakeholders platform. This is simply a lip service. I've seen on how it's done at the national level, and the rights holders are just not there. And the attitude is that, okay, you're the victims, we will support you. But we are also development actors. We are promoting sustainable development. And yet we're not able to say that in any of the processes. So it's important to ensure that effective participation also means recognition of rights, the right to participate, the right to express our views, the right to take action, the right to implement our initiatives for sustainable development. So I would just like to emphasize that we are facing a worsening situation of land rights defenders. As we speak today, a lot are facing threats or even death because they are upholding the rights of marginalized groups over their lands and resources. So the issue of enabling environment for the protection of land rights defenders and advocates should be guaranteed if we need to move forward with the implementation of the SDGs. So these are the very framework of the 12 guidelines that we are proposing, and in addition to this is the need for data, a multi-source of data to show how land tenure is being addressed, where are the gaps, and it should be participatory. It's the rights holders who can tell us if our lands are secure or not. So the data that we produce and our participation in the monitoring and reporting should be ensured. We also need to develop proxy indicators, because how can we measure progress in terms of effective, secure, and secure of land rights and effective land governance if there are no clear indicators that we can monitor and report on. So finally, just to again give emphasis that we need a holistic and human rights-based approach to include land rights holders and marginalized groups in the planning, implementation, monitoring of the SDGs. Without us, we will not achieve the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan, for your very strong call that the implementation of the SDGs has to be rights-based. There are a lot of voluntary commitments, but implementation of voluntary commitments has to be rights-based. And this means the rights of all people have to be considered, otherwise it's not a successful implementation. It's my pleasure and honor now to invite you, Thomas, to take the floor here. You are one of the people being in the center of managing this complex work stream of review, monitoring, implementation of these SDGs. And we are now here to add another layer to talk about new complexities, new challenges. Is this useful for the implementation of the SDGs, or is this just something some people want to play around with and they have some ideas, but the real challenges are elsewhere? I really hope that you have a clear and strong answer, even if I do not agree with it. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alexander. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here, and also I'd like to express my thanks to the German mission, Minister Krupp, that for the way you continuously also promote the discussion about how the system can function better, because this is also what we need. We need people who participate in improving the way we review, the way we approach this 2030 agenda on sustainable development, because it is a very different agenda, and I actually believe that our structures have to be adapted to this new agenda, because it just will work differently. The 2030 agenda is too huge, it is too ambitious, it is too comprehensive to be dealt with in our traditional ways. And therefore, I strongly believe that we need to move from a mindset which is typical for us bureaucrats of control and coordination towards a mindset of mobilization and empowerment. If we don't do that, we will be the obstacle of the institutions that are supposed to promote the 2030 agenda and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals will become the obstacle to them being achieved. And so perhaps I should now sit down and listen rather than continue to speak. But anyway, there's no free lunch, and I said I would be here. Let me say a few more words. I really believe that the Global Soil Week is playing an important role because it tests out this question. How do we deal in an agenda that had a finite number of goals? Some people would have preferred there be far less, but anyway, the complexity and the diversity of humanity is such that we have 17 goals, 169 targets, 232 indicators, and even that doesn't cover everything. So structures and alliances or spaces, let me call them spaces, such as the Global Soil Week, are critical because they allow precisely to discuss these interconnections, these trade-offs, these synergies. And then the question is, okay, so then what do we do with the results? You have them on a leaflet, you have them in a thick book, and where do we place these results so that they can have an effect? And that's my question. That's where, and it's a question where I'm still listening and learning, because in the end we have to build the subsidiarity of the system. We have to make sure that the actors who are responsible to implement the Sustainable Development Goals don't just look to the top and to the center for the solutions or for the guidance. Because what the 193 leaders did in September 2015, they adopted on our behalf the vision. It's not a strategic plan. It doesn't tell every country how to do it, but it's extremely powerful because it's the first time that we have a vision for for our globalization. It's basically the missing piece of the globalization puzzle. And it's a vision that goes beyond just a few sentences, you know, saying that we will live in peace and that we will not overly stretch our natural resources. It's a vision that is relatively precise, 169 targets. This social contract goes into quite some details, and it is quantifiable and it is being monitored. And so we have a wonderful opportunity as an international community to seize this. But at the same time, we have to understand that if we leave aside the shifts in paradigm, the fundamental philosophy that underpins the 2030 agenda, we will not get there. And we just heard from a previous speaker who referred to two of these really critical fundamental philosophies that underpin the 2030 agenda, namely the promise to leave no one behind and the promise to shift the accountability to an accountability to the people. So basically to shift that dialogue to the national level, to the local level. Now what does that mean when we meet at a global level to discuss soils and nutrition? Where should we aim our message? And I think that is a question that we have to respond to, that we have to ask for every recommendation that we have. Every one of those 5 or the sub-recommendations, we have to ask, okay, where do we have to target this recommendation, this policy recommendation? It's not going to work for everything just to come to the center and then maybe to be listed, and then what? You know? We have spaces, we have intergovernmental spaces where the ministries of agriculture, the ministries responsible for food security come together, for example, the Committee for World Food Security. Just to give one example we have counted about 80 different intergovernmental spaces such as that. When I include in that the World Trade Organization, I include the World Health Assembly, the Human Rights Council, etc. These are all spaces that are named, that are mentioned in paragraph 85 of the 2030 agenda, where it specifically says that they should support the thematic reviews of the SDGs. So, which are the messages that have to be aimed there, and how can we deliver them there? But then the other track is just as important, the national reviews, and we've just heard, those national reviews have to get going, and they can't be just every 3 or 4 years here in the UN. It's a continuous process of national review to the people, that is important. So how can the messages that are relevant to that, for example, about land tenure, how can they be placed in the appropriate spaces in this regard? And then we have, of course, another track that feeds into the high-level political forum, and that is on data. And based on your own discussions on soil and on nutrition and on the synergies and trade-offs, you might find that there are some data tracks missing that need to be strengthened. And so those you can also bring them in. In the end, it's really important that we make sure that those people who have to take the action feel responsible to do so, and don't necessarily say, and I often get the question, okay, so if we make recommendations to the HLPF, will the HLPF send us recommendations back? You know, I get this question in the Committee on World Food Security or in the UN Forum on Forests, but I cannot guarantee that you're going to get a message back. But you need to make sure that those recommendations, those findings that you have are deposited with the right actors that need to take action, and that I would like to manage your expectations and say, the fact that year after year the Global Soil Week gets together and discusses these issues under the overarching theme of this shared vision of humanity that we have and of the SDGs is enough of a reason that gives you the authority to do so. So seize that authority, seize that ownership, seize that empowerment that you have to continue implementing, from inwards and downwards, rather than always expecting, let's say, the recommendations from the top, as we sometimes incline to do. So I'd like to give that. It was maybe a bit provocative, but I hope it can help stimulate the discussion that's coming. Thank you so much.
So now we are going to open the floor to you for a first round of comments, questions, criticism. After Thomas spoke, the old saying came into my mind. You might remember it: all politics are local. If we translate it into SDGs, at local, community or landscape level, all SDGs are integrated. You can only divide them into bits and pieces at global level, but at local and community and landscape level, they are all integrated, and therefore we have to ensure the interlinkages between global discussions and local reality. Who wants to take the floor first? Yvonne has the microphone and is waiting for... Please introduce you briefly with one sentence and then 1 minute.
Okay. I'm Susan Brackett with the Quaker UN office in Geneva. I really like that you're linking nutrition and soils, and I think it opens up the possibility to also link with agricultural biodiversity. Mm-hmm. And if we look at malnutrition, we know a major cause of it is dietary simplification. So you've got 2 billion people that are obese, you have stunting, all that underpins that is dietary simplification. And the concern we have a little bit is with SDG 2, the emphasis tends to be on genetic diversity, which is a subset of agricultural biodiversity, an important subset. In crops that means seeds, and that's the source of resilience to our production systems. But if we want to really have healthy people and a healthy planet, we need to support agrobiodiverse systems. That's how you have healthy diets, and that's how you have healthy soil. So biodiversity and agricultural biodiversity needs to include soil and pollinators. And so this is really an opportunity to open that and bring this in as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yvonne, but please don't forget to come back, because in the front there are also other people. No, come back.
Namaste and good afternoon. My name is Vishnumaya Pariyar. I'm from Nepal. I'm so happy that our former ambassador Thomas Joshi spoke, and thank you. I'm the founder and president of Dalit Women Empowerment of Nepal. We are working in grassroots level. If you don't know about Dalit means lower caste women. We have 50,000 women are involved, and we are helping kids to go to school. And if we see all these SDGs, and if this year's theme of the high-level political forum, it's almost all match to what we do. But when they do the national review report, we were not included. And I read the report, and it's not like reality what is happening in the grassroots level. I mean, like, who writes the report? People who live in the city, people who have the power, who work in the high level organizations. So that's why I am so happy that I don't know her name, the former. She spoke very grassroots level. And we need to bridge the gap between grassroots level and the UN system. Mm-hmm. Until we do that, I don't think we can reach the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. There are 2 flags in the back, and then Yvonne is coming to the front again.
Gracias. She said, con mucho gusto. My name is Marta. I am from El Salvador. And, talking in follow-up to what the sister from the indigenous and the First Nations taught, I think it's very important to know that before Colón was Carlos, because this is a major thing that we have to correct, and we discovered him, things were different. And we made mistakes, but we have our own way. Now, the problem that we're having now, and I want to refer not even to my country of El Salvador, that's having terrible situations with this soil degradation and environmental and desertification, water issues. I want to talk about Haiti. Haiti has been left alone, and after the quake,
You know, a lot of people go there, a lot of entities, and people are not allowed to really do the reconstruction and the reconciliation process that they need to do. And there is a lot of corporations there. Corporations go to our countries and build in the most fertile land. They get all kinds of breaks, tax breaks. We have, you know, maquilas all over the place, and to produce at very low cost, and using mostly the strength and the work of women, rural women usually. The other case I want to bring up is the issue of Puerto Rico, with the military bases that take most of the best land. I won't say that much because I know that we don't have enough time, but I want to bring it as an example of the kind of thing that we have to do.
Are you coming to the front? Yes.
Very slowly, but I am.
Thank you. My name is Lisinka Ulatowska. I coordinate the Commons Cluster of the United Nations Major Group. Our conversation so far comes on and seems to get stuck at the human level and the huge problems that we have, and many of us as human beings. There has been mention by yourself, but also by Joan Colley, of the level of nature, and that I've missed, because we cannot do anything in agriculture and with soils unless we understand that we are an integral part of nature. We don't stand outside of nature. We are nature, the air we breathe, the food we eat. We are it, we're nodes in nature, so we cannot stand outside and just do research. We need a completely different way of doing it, and I'd hope that Joan would actually get to that point. But how are you dealing with that? How are you dealing with this new way of looking at things where you cannot stand outside, but where you're a part, and where you have to give the governance to nature, not to ourselves? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. It's really a pleasure to see you and also to listen to all the presenters and thank them. I just wanted to say that, of course, FAO, I'm representing FAO here, is really part of all this process. I see really so much synergy with the global, of course, the Soil Week and what we are doing, and something that came to my mind is really to share some of the highlights of the expert group meeting that took place 3 weeks ago on SDG 2, on reviewing SDG 2. And I wanted to really agree very much with what Joan said, because something that was really came out very strongly is that there is recognition that 80% of the extreme poor are living in rural areas. And most of the time, those are the voices that are not heard. So we really we have to look at them, at the 80%, at the rural poor, at the smallholder farmers, are really the agents of change. And it's really important to unlock their potential. And what does it mean? It means really what we have been talking about, the importance of really building capacity, the importance of listening to them, and all the issues that we've been talking about. And I also want to say that, of course, goal number 2, all the agenda is integrated. Goal number 2 really cuts across the whole agenda. And it's really important because we know that if we really advance in implementing goal number 2 and the other goals, we are really advancing in the whole agenda. Another question that maybe I should put also here to our discussion, and of course, Thomas, I really thank you because you brought all this reflection, and again it came out from the EGM, is that how do we make sure that all this wealth of ideas and conclusions really fit into the ministerial declaration, but not only they will impact on the work that we do at the country level, and then we start seeing really people who should really be the agent of change that we're talking about, really seeing the result out of it. So this is really something that came very strongly, and I think that should really continue to be part of our reflection. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Kala Mukavi, Director of the FAO office here in New York, and being responsible for linking FAO together with the other Rome-based agencies into all these complex processes. Thomas, the brief intervention made very clear that we have not only the complexities within the SDGs, but also underlying causes. I was surprised to learn that we have to correct the discovery of the Americas by Columbus, if I understood it in the right way. I don't think this can be achieved with the SDGs. But the secret behind is that mankind was always very expensive. Whenever we had a problem, we tried to export it. And there must be a piece of land somewhere which we can use for whatever. This time is over, and the time of flying to the Mars to do it in a similar way has not yet arrived. And therefore, I strongly believe that the concept of one planet and one humanity has to be integrated. And I would love to do a thematic review on genetic resources for food and agriculture. You know it perfectly well. There is a specific goal, 2.5. Maintain genetic diversity for food and agriculture, and now please listen, by 2020, the day after tomorrow, they have translated the Aichi targets into the SDGs, and therefore we will see in a few years' time, did we achieve some of the SDGs as agreed in September 2015, or what was the reason why we did not really manage with it yet? Genetic resources is among of them, and we have other Aichi targets coming from the Convention of Biological Diversity, providing guidance for what we have to do. So there is a matter of urgency, and therefore, matter of urgency, I think it's also important to create appropriate partnerships, and I'm really happy that Ruth Richardson from the Global Alliance for the Future of Food is here. This Global Alliance of the Future of Food is working on a lot of issues related to food and agriculture, including biodiversity, including employment, including management of natural resources, including human health. We know that from the first report on nutrition, the first global report on nutrition, diets are the health risk #1 for humans now. So we have a situation where we produce enough kilocalories for everybody, and 850 million people are still hungry, and up to 2 billion people are malnourished. They lack vitamins and micronutrients, and we have a growing number of people with obesity and diabetes type 2. So something must not be in order in the food system. What does it mean for doing a thematic review for nutrition? An easy question, Ruth, but a very difficult answer we're expecting from you. Ruth Richardson from the Global Alliance for the Future of Food.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to the event chair and to the country co-hosts, and also importantly to the very important voices that I've heard from the stage thus far. I don't know if I'll have the answers, Alexander, but I can certainly provide some thoughts. As Alexander mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. We are an alliance of over 20 philanthropic foundations that are mostly coming from the United States and Europe, although they do fund internationally on their own unique agendas, whether that's women's empowerment in West Africa, or the root causes of climate change, or genetic improvements in plant varieties. But together, what we do is we really try to push the agenda for sustainable, secure, and equitable food systems globally. So the reason that we focus on food systems is that we really believe that they are central to all the critical issues that we face today as a global community. Of course, diverse agricultural production systems grow our crops and livestock, and they employ more people than any other economic sector. They're underpinned by complex biological and climatic feedback loops. They're central to our social and economic systems, which transform agricultural production into food and deliver it to people through market forces, government policies, corporate strategies. And I'll just point that they're also connected, of course, to all the issues that have been raised in the question period, whether it's indigenous rights or the connection to nature or the connection to agricultural biodiversity, and the list goes on and on. So from that perspective, I would just like to say that I really support the notion of thematic reviews that allow implementers and other stakeholders to consider the SDGs from a systems perspective. We must start thinking globally, holistically, and systemically, beginning with connecting and integrating interventions, breaking down silos, and examining the integration, alignment, and coherence across issues that are connected to this global systems, including the SDGs. Paula Caballero from the World Bank said it very well when she said, there simply isn't enough time or money to pursue isolated and contradictory solutions. The world is getting smaller, more constrained, and interconnected. We have an opportunity to apply systems-wide thinking and leverage data to solve the challenges of our time. If we don't do this, we really risk unintended consequences. We miss powerful opportunity to advance solutions with multiple benefits across these goals. And I think we also miss finding ways that governments can save scarce resources by ensuring synergies between targets. So for this reason, we are supporting a study that Alexander mentioned, TEEB Agri-Food, which is a holistic, comprehensive valuation framework for eco-agri-food systems. And again, this is because we believe in coming at food systems reform from an integrated and holistic perspective. TEEB has a whole systems approach. It draws from the best existing knowledge in different disciplines and uses a systemic lens to evaluate the results, paying special attention to the linkages and the feedback loops within those systems. The framework is sort of, as I see it, a new budget sheets of sorts where we can see the costs and externalities that we usually see, like wages, subsidies, and taxes, but it also includes social, cultural, and behavioral issues, as well as resilience concerns in the analysis, considering both monetary and non-monetary values. The aim is to be able to take this very comprehensive holistic framework, to apply it to different scales, different geographies, different businesses, policies, farms, etc., and to really help us to genuinely understand those systems, the interconnections, and to use as a basis for good decision making to improve the world's eco-agri-food systems in the interest of both present and future generations. Health is an absolutely central component to the TEEB Agri-Food framework. We've done a lot of work on identifying the main health externalities and impacts of food systems. The conclusion of that emerging work is what? Well, our food systems are not producing health, ironically. And also that we cannot separate issues of health from issues of production, from issues of ecological integrity, issues of equity, or issues related to any of the big challenges we see. So this brings me to the idea of having a thematic review based on health and nutrition. I think that this is an incredibly powerful case. And the reasons for that is that investing in food security, health, nutrition enables and reinforces, for instance, the poverty goal, since enhanced food and nutrition security are essential to reduce poverty. It also suggests that providing vulnerable populations with adequate nutrition contributes to reduce maternal mortality and preventable deaths of newborns and children. It's also connected in that food and nutrition security and stable agricultural employment have even been proven to help reduce epidemics of communicable diseases such as HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis. And nutrition is increasingly seen to be connected to educational outcomes, sanitation and hygiene, women's empowerment, macro and microeconomic development, production patterns, and again, the list goes on. So at the Global Alliance, we and our members are committed to broad, multi-sectoral, integrated, and long-term understanding of how food systems and its nutritional impacts are effectively built into policy and systems change. And as such, we really believe that it's critical to consider the issue of health and nutrition in the implementation of the SDGs moving forward. The health of the people and planet will be determined by our ability to find these cross-cutting themes that allow us to think systemically, to act quickly, and to find strategies that take us further much faster in order to realize the SDGs as urgently and as smartly as is possible. So a couple questions are surfaced from this. First of all, how can a thematic review of progress to this issue be carried out? What are the variables to consider? What kind of messages could we aim for? And I've been asked to look to our next speaker to help us answer some of those questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Ruth, for starting to build a bridge between thematic review on land and soils and what we want to do in the next years of thematic review on nutrition. I'm very happy to invite Anke Niederhaus, the head of unit for nutrition, but also dealing with the reduction of food waste and food losses in the German Ministry for Agriculture, is going to take the floor here, trying to outline what could be next steps in order to apply the idea of a thematic review from land and soils to a thematic review on nutrition, which might be much more complex than dealing with land and soils, as you say, only. Anke Niederhaus, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, respected speakers. On behalf of the German Ministry of Food and Agriculture, the BMEL, I would like to thank you very much for the participation, your inspiring speeches, and for the discussions. Due to obligations, Dr. Haider regrets his not coming, but I was happy to jump in and can give you his warm greetings. So it is very inspiring to know there are ideas on how we can all best support the implementation of the SDGs and the work of the high-level political forum as a place where their review takes place. The BML welcomes the discussions of this meeting as they have outlined broader open questions and opportunities for future activities of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. This agenda takes every country, every business, in fact each one of us, in the responsibility to contribute to a more sustainable future. Recognizing the important role that agriculture plays for sustainable development, the BMEL has been engaged with the process leading to the SDGs since early stages. This is necessary to better understand the strategies that will be required to feed a growing population adequately with the existing natural resources at our disposition, while acknowledging and addressing the challenges presented by climate change and its impacts. The 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals have a high priority for our ministry. Ladies and gentlemen, for the areas of work of our ministry, the SDGs present a new framework to think about critical issues. For instance, agriculture, as the largest user of land service, can contribute not only feeding the world, but also to achieving climate goals by supporting the capture and storage of carbon in the soil. There are also many linkages to the protection of natural resources, such as water. We are very committed to supporting our government's plans and goals for a meaningful decarbonization process, especially through promoting bioeconomy. We are also very much aware that all this potential for agriculture to contribute to sustainable development will require that resources are used sustainably and preserved for future generations. When it comes to nutrition and the SDGs, we aim to support the efforts at the global level in the implementation, follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda. In the case of nutrition, for instance, there is a need for more coordinated actions and policies that jointly support improvements in access and availability of nutritious food and also reaching healthy diets, but also that deal with systemic issues leading to health issues related to nutrition. This is why we are teaming up with Alexander and his team at TMG to look at the SDGs from the perspective of nutrition. Nutrition is a highly dynamic policy field with growing importance for sustainable development in its three dimensions and for the achievement of the 2030 Agenda as a whole. At the international level, the focus has been on safeguarding the world's food supply for a growing population. However, issues such as healthy eating, the effects of nutritional deficiencies and costs of nutrient-related diseases such as overweight and type 2 diabetes, and the central question of the relationship between healthy diet and sustainability are increasingly playing a role on the international agenda. The main question here is how an integrated implementation of the 2030 Agenda can be promoted and achieved. Due to its cross-sectoral nature, the topic of nutrition would be particularly well suited to point out the links between the SDGs, and thus identify synergies and possible conflicts. At the beginning of June, UNDESA and the Rome-based agency held an expert group meeting on SDG 2 implementation. The meeting highlighted 2 points that would be important to take forward for an SDG review from the perspective of nutrition. Point 1, transformative change is necessary to reach SDG 2 and the 2030 Agenda. This means transforming our food systems so that they are more sustainable, inclusive and resilient to climate change. We cannot lose sight as to why this is important. People are at the center of the 2030 Agenda. We need sustainable food systems to produce the safe and nutritious food and that promote healthy diets that people need to thrive. Food and agriculture can be a part of the solution to climate change, to eradicate poverty, and a powerful driver for health and sustainable development. But we cannot only look at production and productivity. Hence, point 2, food security and nutrition governance must be more inclusive at all levels. So starting from local communities and going up to the subnational, national, regional and global levels, and ensuring equitable participation at all levels. These inclusive governance structures should be used to guide more efficient allocation of resources, using policy and regulatory frameworks, promoting accountability. Governance of food systems will be essential for shaping food security and nutrition outcomes. To answer your questions, I come at the end and say a few words more about our methodology. So what we can learn from the discussions today is the need for any endeavor to contribute to the HLPF to serve as bridge, to empower different actors to share their priorities on the implementation of the SDGs. We will carefully study the outcome report of the Global Soil Week as we move forward with our work on nutrition. We hope to continue the discussions with all of you and look very much forward to the outcome of the HLPF. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Now we are at the second round of interventions, and I would ask you to please concentrate on the question how to best translate the work we have done on land and soils to an integrated thematic review on nutrition. Do you have any ideas? Are there any proposals or questions related to it? Yvonne still has the microphone. You decide, because you have the microphone.
Hi, I'm Christa Duret from Action Against Hunger. Well, actually, it's a bit related also to your question as well. Well, I was a bit surprised in the first round not to hear a bit more about climate change, but now we've heard about it, because for me it's definitely like a strong link between like soil, land, and nutrition. You know, today that and then one of the key drivers of undernutrition is climate change. And for me also, well, the way to create a nexus between land, agriculture, and nutrition is definitely to create a stronger linkage with SDG 13, which is climate change. And I was wondering if more especially what has come out of a discussion, you know, in the first thematic review on how to address the issue of climate change. Thanks. Thank you. My name is Emily and I work with Beyond International, which is an organization working on the human right to food and nutrition. I first of all want to thank you all for your presentations. It's really exciting to hear the linkages between nutrition and soils, which is really making the clear call that we really need to focus more on transforming the food system, not just certain aspects of it. So I thank you a lot for organizing such an event. To answer your question, to give a suggestion on how we start to think more thematically on looking at these issues together, I think it wasn't really mentioned so much in this event, but the work that's going on in the Committee on World Food Security is incredibly important, I think, to this topic. Since the reform of the CFS some 5 or 6 years ago, an incredible amount of policy documents and recommendations which have been fully negotiated with member states and with a very strong role of the civil society organizations, but in particular those who are most affected by food insecurity and hunger, taking an important role in this. And I think it's important also to acknowledge the concerns of our friend who spoke earlier, that just because you have a multi-stakeholder space doesn't necessarily mean it's a human rights space. So we always need to keep that into consideration. But part of the mandate of the reform CFS was to create an innovative monitoring mechanism. And in the past 2 years, it has finally been realized, and actually Germany last year was one of the first member states to take this initiative on to systematically review the 10-year guidelines. And within the CFS, you have very strong terms of reference of how these events should be organized. And so I would really call on you to really take this into consideration to see how we can better integrate the CFS policy decisions into this process. And also start to think about how the nutrition issue, which is one of the key issues that's being developed now, is actually really looking at the role of agri-food systems, and as well as next year the new report on agroecology, that I think there's a lot of linkages that could be taken into account. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Milagro Geos from Together 2030, and we are a coalition of now we passed 500 organizations, and what we focus on efforts on is creating and strengthening capacities. So I just wanted to ask how initiatives such as the Global Soil Week could be an example for other themes, for people to engage and build their capacity so they can really have a meaningful participation in the implementation at the national and regional level of the SDGs.
I'm curious who should answer all these questions, but we will find out.
Thank you. I'm Sasha Kuroshima from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in the Office of Water. We've been involved in this SDG process through the Open Working Group process, as well as with many stakeholders as a national agency. We work locally as well. And internationally. And so in this process, I like to raise, I think as are already raised in the previous speakers, in terms of innovation. We are trying to produce more food for a burgeoning population with less amount of land available. And the soil quality as well as the water quality linkages, I think, needs to be highlighted. We have been working heavily with the UN Environment Program. Under that is the prevention of land-based sources of pollution. One theme of that is the Global Partnership on Nutrient Management, which exactly focuses on this issue of nutrition. We have not been using fertilizers. We've been using the same fertilizer since it was discovered, and now we're rethinking a new fertilizer and how to apply it so it would not be leached into the water, protection of water quality, as well as plant absorption. So, and that includes micronutrients as well. So this includes the nutritional element of crops. So some of those things I think can be highlighted in terms of the thematic review going forward.
Yeah, Susan Brackett again from the Quaker UN office in Geneva. I just, a couple things, wanted just to repeat, if you don't have agricultural biodiversity, you won't have nutrition and you won't have healthy soil. So I think any thematic review with nutrition is going to need to include that. I also just wanted to thank Carlin for her colleagues who organized the EGM, the expert group meeting on SDG 2. I thought it was very well organized. Then there's a two-pager of what the EGM concluded. And civil society, if anybody wants it, we also have a two-page also comments on outcomes of EGM. So if anybody wants that, I have it.
Thank you. I'm Rob Wheeler. I represent the Global Eco-Village Network and the Commons Cluster at the UN. Many of our older eco-village communities, most of them really have been practicing regenerative agriculture practices and restoring the natural environment where they live for decades. I think if we look at even the experts, most people don't really understand the extent of change that we need to make if we're going to meet the goals. We know that FAO says within 60 years we'll lose most of our topsoil unless we change our agricultural practices. A huge amount of the soils around the world are degraded. We're already facing major impacts from drought and desertification from climate change that are only going to increase. So I'm glad that in the policy recommendations from the Soils Week that it talks about extension programs. There's no question that there's a huge investment needs to be made in that, but yet we see investments in agriculture declining decade after decade. The changes that need to be made with smallholder farmers as well as industrial agriculture around the world calls for something more than just expanding extension programs. We need to see some type of a major global campaign for switching our agricultural practices and restoring the natural environment around the world. This type of a global campaign needs to engage people at a community level all around the planet for discussions. The agricultural practices that need to be made alone are so substantive, from landscape, water retention landscaping, to regenerative agricultural practices, cover cropping, mulching, composting, on and on. I was also very happy to see the reference to land degradation neutrality. But we need to go beyond just neutrality. We've degraded the landscape to such an extent that it needs to be restored, not only reaching neutrality. And similar land resource protection. Again, we need to regenerate what's already been destroyed. And this needs to be linked into this type of a global campaign. We know that we've actually, scientists that we say that we have put more carbon into the atmosphere from degrading the natural environment, the land, the soils, the plants, than from all the fossil fuel emissions. That's a huge amount, but that gives us an enormous opportunity to recapture and sequester all that carbon back into plants and soils. So I just encourage us to have a bigger picture of what are the shifts that need to be made and how we can do it. Thank you.
Yeah, Thomas?
Hello, yes, hi, I'm Tom Forster, and I've had the privilege of working in a multi-actor framework here in New York to help design that expert group meeting that just occurred, and it was a great example of a joint effort, not only the RBAs and DESA working together, but in the preparation of that report, final statement that we just heard read parts of, that was vetted with 75 participants who came out of 100 who spoke at that. So I just point that up because I think there is a level of inclusiveness that can be managed. However, it has to be managed, and that is always the critical challenge. And I would suggest that what was offered was a very interesting concept of lifting out of these ad hoc EGMs of the specific SDGs under review this year, which was an experiment, into something that builds on that with links, and the nutrition, soils, health one is very well and strategically placed for thinking of land, water, cities, energy, the nexus issues next year that are coming along. So I think the 2 points here is the strategic placement of building on previous deepenings of this dialogue around complex management at the most inclusive levels with actors, like Robert was just saying, at the very specific levels of management detail, and then really trying to support the institutions at the apex level that have such a hard time dealing with the managing of all those voices.
Thanks a lot. Yvonne brought my smartphone to me, not because I have to receive a call, but she wants me to look at the time. We are over the time already and we have to come to an end. Is there any absolutely urgent request, a comment, or something someone has to really put now on the table? This is the last order. If not, and I don't see anybody, I try to go as quickly as possible through all your comments. Climate change. Climate change is a multiplier of already existing risks. And it hurts the poorest people the most, and it hurts the people who have not contributed to climate change the first. And therefore it's a big and huge question of global equity. And therefore it has to be considered in thematic reviews. We did not line it out, but it's very clear. Nobody really knows how to manage land and natural resources when the average temperature in sub-Saharan Africa will increase by 5 or 6 degrees centigrade. This is a huge challenge, and what we have seen last year or the year before with El Nino might be a window into the future, because there we have seen extreme weather events, and this might be the normal weather in the future, and therefore it has to be there in thematic reviews. CFS, I couldn't agree more, and I also personally would like to go CFS beyond. This is, if it's true that the eating is the proof of the pudding, then the question of monitoring and follow-up of the big decisions made by CFS is the proof of what CFS can really do. I could talk at length about it, but I would like to support you. Yes, of course, we would like to share our experiences on these global and thematic reviews, but we would like to encourage also others to try their own format. For us, this is a learning process. So far, it never has been done to look in a cross-cutting way at global and local issues at the same time, and therefore it's a learning process, and we need others to also contribute and to provide input to our work. With regard to Sasha, yes, we need this kind of innovation, but we have to be very careful what we call an innovation. Very often, business as usual with some efficiency savings is called an innovation. Also what our colleague said about the huge transformation needed. We need other types of innovation, including, by the way, also social innovations. It's not only technologies, but it's technology and also social innovation. And we know that big data can drive it, but we also know that there is a political economy behind big data. It's not neutral. And therefore, the governance of innovation is an interesting debate, and not many countries would like to talk about governance of innovation. They want it to be seen as only market-driven. Yes to biodiversity, no doubt. But please, come up with a proposal how to achieve SDG 2.5 by 2020. This is one of the most important things over the next years, to provide enough evidence that the world has done enough to achieve the SDGs by 2020, which means the Aichi targets. Transformation, I already tried to address it. It's a huge challenge, and we all like to talk about transformation, but how difficult it is to change everyday life. We all know it, and transformation goes far beyond. So I tried to address this, and thanks Thomas for highlighting the role we together, because you have supported it since many years. We have to find a new format, and then I'm coming to my conclusions immediately, to support success of high-level political forum. The 2 weeks in July in New York are not going to solve the problems of the world. What they can do, and this is my first conclusion, is, and Thomas already lined it out, that they can create a new dynamic, and they can create spaces for people to work on achieving the SDGs with innovative forms. And there will also be mistakes, of course. There will be a lot of debates, and there are interests, but we have to set up processes to support the high-level political forum so that we get meaningful reviews, not so easy, that we can work on complex cross-cutting issues, and that the high-level political forum also has the power to reform itself as far as I know, by 2020, there will be a discussion, what did we achieve? Are we on the right track? And therefore, let's use the high-level political forum as a trigger to support change and to really find out what does it mean to talk about transformation. That's my message number one. Message number two, I think it became absolutely clear that problems in complex systems, and my God, agriculture is a very complex system, can only be solved with systematic solutions. If we look at one issue only, we might have negative side effects on other issues, and therefore the systems approach is so important. Talking about integration and integrated solutions, message number two. But these integrated solutions, that's my message number three, has to be translated to the level where the action is. This is the local level, community level, and landscape level. And what we would like to do is to link local level and global level in a way that both can benefit. Let's be honest, so far, most of the work at the local level is done without any reference to the SDGs. And very often people say we are implementing SDG A, B, and C, but they're doing it as they have done it over the last 20 years. The implementation of the SDGs requires a new approach, and here in New York, high-level political forum has to learn from the experiences gained at the local level so that there's a feedback loop. For me, SDGs can also be translated into a global learning process with impact at local level. This also requires, message number four, that we take very serious what the representatives of civil society told us. We are not talking about just listening to people and then doing business as usual. We are talking about rights. We are talking about right holders. We are talking about the right to development. And this is a very different approach than having the right to profit. And therefore, talking about shrinking spaces for civil society in some countries is absolutely important. The SDGs have only been developed in such a successful way because it was an inclusive process. Triggered, by the way, from the global south. Not the developed world said we need to transform the way we consume and produce. No, it were countries from the global south, such as Colombia, Costa Rica, who said, come on, the MDGs were a good step forward, but you guys in the north, you also have to change, and therefore they triggered this change, and this means we have to have this inclusive approach between north and south, but also in the countries, we need to create space for civil society to raise questions, even if people sometimes don't like the questions, but this can create the dynamic we need. And last message, what from our perspective the thematic reviews are doing is they provide a process of feeding lessons learned from the global level into global discussions, but also the feedback loop from the global level to the local level. Only if we get this interconnection right, we can really implement it. The SDGs will only be successful if they work at the global level, if they really don't leave anybody behind, and they will not be successful if we have produced a lot of nice brochures and booklets for the international libraries. These are my 5 conclusions where we are going to work on. We are trying to work together with all of you and with the support of the German Ministry for Food and Agriculture on the question how to best start a scoping study on nutrition as a thematic review. And I promise you we will come back and we will try to inform you, but you also have to promise to come back and you have to provide input to these processes, because this is not an academic exercise. This is what we like to call a science policy interface, where science and policy is working together. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for staying a bit longer, and have a nice day.